I want to welcome everyone to Saturday's um, AI and OER Institute at Clover Park Technical College. And I am thrilled to introduce Maha Bailey. She was a professor of practice at the Center for Learning and Teaching at the American University in Cairo. She has a PhD in education from the University of Sheffield, and she's the co-founder of virtuallyconnecting.org, a grassroots movement that challenges academic gatekeeping at conferences. She's also a co-facilitator of Equity Unbound. She writes and speaks frequently about social justice, critical pedagogy, and open and online education. And she regularly blogs at blog.mahabailey.me. And I highly recommend that because she's written some really interesting things centered around AI and social justice and ethics. So without any further ado, I'm passing the baton to Maha Bailey.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jeff. Thank you all for coming here, and thanks for having me. I always like to start with saying Assalamu alaikum. This is peace be upon you in Arabic, and it works for day and night because it's 7 p.m. for me and it's morning for most of you guys, so I can't say good morning. And I always want to ask how you're feeling. So tell me in the chat how you're feeling, and if you also want to share something about where you're joining us from along. Alaikum salam. Yes, Leanne, thank you. Well, there's no spelling because it's Arabic, so it's just transliteration, right? Yeah, sure. I'll put a link to my blog. And you're recording this, right?
Yes, yeah, we're.
Can we just turn off the waiting room instead of, because I keep getting pop-ups of people in the waiting room and I'm letting them in.
Oh, we're letting
them
in. You can.
I think I'm faster, but it's
Okay,
gonna
okay.
keep popping while I'm talking, you know?
Okay. Hold on.
All right.
Let's see.
Yeah, sunny in Seattle. That's great. Feeling good in Redmond. Good in a thunderstormy Minnesota. I hope it's a light one. Doing well, a bit tired, but pleased to join day 2. Excited, optimistic. Orcas Island, happy to be here today. Excited to hear from you. Right. Stressed about the world? Yes. And excited to learn from Maha. The world is very stressful right now. 9 a.m. looking out at sunshine and hummingbirds. Oh, it's lovely. Gorgeous weather in Tacoma. Feeling hopeful. And the weather helps, honestly, with mood. It really does. It really can. All right. Thank you for sharing. All right. I'll get started. I do want to say something funny. So I have no idea why I gave the title of What Gets in the Way of Intelligence Meeting Access rather than Artificial Intelligence. So I'm adding the artificial here. But for some reason, that's what I named it when I gave it to folks at Clover Park. And I'm going to be talking about equity considerations when considering AI for openness. I will never call it X. I'm on Twitter, Bali_Maha, and I'll give you my blue sky later. It's mahabali.bsky.social. And this image on the left is one of the things I sometimes do with AI, because I don't use AI that much. But this was me playing with my daughter. And she asked it she prompted it to give a cute picture of the Sphinx. And I just think it's really cute. It looks like a Sad Sam version of a Sphinx. And I always wanted to sell it at the airport, print it out and sell it in the airport. So anyway, I will start with a land acknowledgement. We don't do land acknowledgements in Egypt. And it's one of the things that's always fascinated me about why people do it and how they do it and whether it's meaningful. So my version of a land acknowledgement is not really a land acknowledgement, but it's something that I think is important to start with when we're talking about social justice. And it's that coloniality survives colonialism. It's maintained alive in books, criteria for academic performance, cultural patterns, common sense, self-image of peoples, aspirations of self, and so many other aspects of our modern experience. And in a way, as modern subjects, we breathe coloniality all the time and every day. And I think AI is definitely a manifestation of that as well. And just to let you know, expect interaction today. I'm going to ask you questions. We've just done the check-in. I'm going to do some chatterfall, asking about how you're feeling and metaphors you have of AI. I'm going to share my critical AI literacy model at some point, but the focus is on thinking about models to help us focus on social justice concerns and biases. and helping us make decisions about what we're going to do about this, keeping in mind these priorities. And then I'll share some further resources, and I want to hear from you about your takeaways. I will try to stick to time, but I'm going to share my slides with you anyway. So if I don't go through everything, don't worry, you'll have the slides. And there are Creative Commons license, non-commercial, so you can use any part of it without, just as long as you attribute me and you don't sell it. And I do want to say I try to be, as much as possible, against AI shaming. I think we hold multiple views about AI, and there are people who are excited about AI despite its ethical issues, and there are people who reject AI despite its potential. I do have a view. I'm not neutral. I have values and I have a perspective on this, but I'm an educational developer, so my role is to support other people, and I want to respect that other people have different views. But I just want to encourage us to listen to each other's perspectives on this, and that even if someone's very excited about AI, to keep an open mind about the ethical issues and not to just, resist listening to them. And at the same time, I try to also make sure to listen to people sharing positive experiences about AI, even if they're different than my experiences. And I love Vanessa Andreotti's general stance, because she calls them emergent intelligences, right? And she says, how we choose to steward emergent intelligences will shape not only its future, but our own. And we can choose how we steward AI. If we do it through a paradigm of extraction and exploitation, we will accelerate our demise. But if we guide AI towards a relational rationality rooted in accountability, kindness, and care, it may in turn help scaffold humanity to embody those same qualities, offering us a pathway to face modernity's hallucinations and the truths it has conditioned us to deny. And in Vanessa's work, she generally says that the AI we have now and the problems we have with it are related to modernity and coloniality and things that are there in the world, and AI is mirroring that and reflecting that back to us. But what if we reimagined AI in different ways and we had it trained in different ways and we use it in different ways? Can we use it with relationality and care and kindness instead? So let's keep that in mind. I'm having trouble copying this link, but I'll put it down for you. This is the link to my slides, which you can comment on. So it's not even just for you to look at the slides while we're together, but you can also look at them later. So it's bit.ly/Bali Clover, just capital C. Everything else is lowercase. All right, so tell me something about yourself. What do you do for work? Who do we have in the room? I am mainly a professor of practice at the Center for Learning and Teaching. So I'm mainly an educational developer. I help other people with their teaching, but I also teach an undergraduate course. And as Jeff says, I also blog and I have a lot of public scholarship with Virtually Connecting and Equity Unbound and things like that. Okay, so we have math professor, pharmacy technician, teaching in a pharmacy technician program, librarian, physiology professor, psychology, online, ELL vocational, instructional designer, Center for Learning and Teaching. All right, several instructional designers. My department has a few instructional designers as well. Professional photographer and professor of photography, yeah. Dean of Library Learning Innovation, we also teach. Math, computer science, ESL, faculty. I'm originally a computer scientist, by the way. So my undergrad was in computer science, and then I changed my mind, studied education. ESL instructor, faculty, academic advisor for grad students in nursing programs, English teacher, science librarian, ECE, which is it English communication? I don't know what ECE is, but I have a feeling, yeah, because the one after it is English and communications. All right, computer security instructor. Human services, behavioral health crisis. That's a lot of diversity in terms of background. Thank you all for sharing. And someone is the OER champion in their institution, right? Yeah, okay. Recruiting faculty to OER. And you're associate prof of music. Oh, wow, that's so interesting. I remember the first time I heard about musicians using AI. This was a long time ago, actually, and how they used it to help them. All right, so tell me something related to your attitude towards the AI. And I'm gonna give you a list of attitudes in the next slide, but you could have a completely different attitude, and that's totally fine. I'm going to have a Slido, so don't vote just yet. Don't tell me the chat. It's going to be overwhelming if we did that.
Ew.
I'm just going to read quickly a few other Oh, Sandrine, I thought I saw your name. We met last year in Geneva. That's why I kept looking up your name in my email and I couldn't find it. All right, it's good to see you. As soon as you walked in, I was like, I know this person. All right. Sally, early childhood education, that's what you see. Thank you. All right, we have mental health and Dean of Library and Learning Support. Okay, all right, so these are the attitudes. These come from a book that Vanessa Andreotti co-authored with AI called Burnout from Humans, and this is a sort of an edit from them by someone called Teresa Distribek. So which of these are you? And I'm going to allow you to vote for more than one using Slido. Are you an instrumentalization wizard? You'll wield AI for anything. Are you playful chaotic, treating it as a playground? Are you a skeptical pragmatist, hesitant and cautious, but you'll use it when it works? Are you a capitalist extractor? You see it as a way to make profit? Are you a data guardian, worried about privacy? Are you a footprint alarmist, worried about the environment? Shutdown brigade. You want to shut down AI for the future? Human-centric purist. You say AI is a tool that threatens humanity's sacredness, creativity and sacredness, or something else. So this is the voting option. I'm using Slido, and so you can either use the QR code with your phone, or you can go to slido.com and enter the code, which is 3902684. And you can vote for more than one. I'm saying choose up to two, but I don't think I've actually limited it. So if someone ends up choosing more than one, that's more than two, that's also probably okay. The order changes, so now the people who typed in the chat have no idea what you were choosing, but I think two was playful chaotic. That's what people in the chat were saying. But okay, let's see what we've got. So far, skeptical pragmatist is the highest. Yeah, and if whoever says other, just tell me in the chat what the other thing is that you feel is you or represents you. Someone is saying other, being chaotic, good, skeptical, pragmatist, borrowing a term from Dungeons and Dragons. Oh, okay. I didn't know that term from Dungeons and Dragons. Someone else talking about literally playing in the background these days. Optimistically anxious. Okay. All right. So the majority of those who voted chose skeptical pragmatist. And I will say that resonates with me as well, although I see very few people are human-centric purists, and that's the other strong part of me. I'm not seeing a lot of shutdown brigade, but there's also a lot of playful chaotic, and between skeptical pragmatist and playful chaotic, there were a lot of people. And I think those of us who are innovative and those of us who tend to be on the edge of what's happening with technology can usually fall into one of these two. Um, but I also am very, very concerned. Um, but I still have to experiment with it because of my job and because I teach digital literacies to undergrads, so this has to be part of what I teach them. But it doesn't necessarily mean that I teach it and say it's all good, it's going to be great, but I still have to know what's going on. Someone else is saying it's a non-autonomous tool. Don't even trust my dishwasher's results without checking them, but it's way better than doing them by hand for the dishwasher. Yeah. All right. And I do want to comment that like 29% are footprint alarmists, which is good because like I think a year ago there were very few people who were aware of the carbon footprint of AI. So the 30% of people who answered this are aware is a good thing. All right. So I want to ask you this question because this is a conference about AI plus OER, right? So for you, what is the place of AI in open education? Where do you think its potential is? And I know you've had already a day of this conference, so maybe you got new ideas. Accessibility, enhancing learning. You think you don't know yet, yeah. And I think Todd, you were saying your daughters would choose footprint alarmists. I think that's what you were saying. A tool for remixing and revising existing OER. Developing study materials based on curated content. Its place is where students decide it is. I love that, Greg. I think I have it on my slides later, this concept of letting students decide kind of thing. Time efficiency, digital processing ability, assistant for production. I knew you were going to say this, Jonathan, no place at all. It's the antithesis of education, all of the values of open. Nizar, affordability, equity and collaboration, tutorial support. And I will say that some of your answers are more specific than others. So enhancing learning is very generic. We could say that about anything and it doesn't really, I'm sure you mean something more behind it, but that's not enough for me to understand how you're going to use it. And with accessibility, I'm going to talk about that a lot. So we'll see how that goes. All right, I was at the Grand Egyptian Museum last week with some friends. And there's something interesting in the chat that I want to read first. So Leanne is saying, earlier this year, Canadian press say that equity with AI looks like those who might have less confidence in their writing to be allowed to use AI. Yes, to help them with their confidence in that. Yeah. And those with higher should not be allowed to use it. The inclusion and flexibility is important with, yes, I get that completely. I'll talk about this again later as we go. And Joseph, thank you for giving me a detailed answer. That helps me understand where you're coming. And Joseph, OER search, curation, quickly building a D2L course, shell to pass along to the faculty colleague to flesh out the details. Right. So for creating like templates or space to go, and then they fill out the details. That makes sense. I use AI for that sometimes. Okay. So I was at the Grand Egyptian Museum, which is a new museum. And this goddess is called Sekhmet. And I was like really confused about this. And I asked an Egyptologist friend of mine, how is this the same goddess of war, destruction, and plague, but she is also worshipped as the protector of the king and a goddess of healing? How can she do both at the same time? And I asked, so she only protects the king. She doesn't protect anyone else. She just protects the king. But she is the goddess of healing for everyone else. So there's an element of like who she chooses to protect and when she chooses to protect. And I thought like AI is a little bit like that. Like a lot of the companies that create AI tools claim to be doing ethical AI. I was just at a conference in Geneva again, Sandrine, called AI for Good Global Summit. And a lot of the companies that claim to do AI for good are also the same companies that have been using AI to support war crimes, some of the worst ones. And otherwise, a lot of AI tools are being used for surveillance, and a lot of them include exploitation of labor. And yet, a lot of people really applaud them and love them and treat them as if they're going to solve humanity or whatever. So there's that. Someone's joking about the goddess multitasking. I mean, the problem isn't the multitasking, and goddess can do several things, but they're paradoxical things. So they're opposite things. Be the goddess of war and healing at the same time. I mean, of course, we need healing when there's war, but. All right, what's the metaphor for AI that you would use? I started asking this question a while ago. My mom, who's not an educator or a computer scientist or anything, she's a medical doctor, she said AI or ChatGPT is like fast food. And I thought that was a pretty good metaphor. So I'd love to hear yours. Fake smart. I like that, Danielle. That's a good one, actually. As you said that, it also made me think about students in college who are just very eloquent, but they're empty. So they sound very impressive when they talk, and another student might be impressed by them, but the professor knows that they're just talking nonsense. Shiva, destruction and reincarnation. Oh, I didn't know that. I guess this must exist in a lot of different mythologies then, or religions. Shiva sounds Indian? I'm not sure. Just saying powerful toddler. I like that. Leanne, word and pattern predictor. Right or wrong? Yes, not that metaphorical, but it's still useful, I think, to understanding. I think metaphors are useful to see which aspects of AI we want to focus on, even though they're never complete in explaining the whole thing. But it gives me an idea of attitude. Brilliant assistant with no common sense. I like that a lot. Encyclopedia. Okay, Alfie Cohn shared an article about microwave, and when I read it, I changed the microwave to I'll find the link. Okay, thanks. Eager intern. Yeah, I hear that one a lot. It's definitely eager. A race to the bottom, like when everyone copies everyone else and calls it a best practice. I like that. I like that a lot. Thank you all for sharing those. So, I mean, I'm not gonna share this article right now, and for some reason, I'm not able to copy links from my slides. But I do have an article co-authored with a few other people, including a former student of mine. And it's called Assistant Parrot or Colonizing Loudspeaker, ChatGPT Metaphors for Developing Critical AI Literacies. And we critique a lot of metaphors and we put them, we compare whether they're more positive or negative or more rhetorical. And thank you, Terry and Eleanor. And we also talk about the dangers of anthropomorphizing, making AI seem like it's human, and we compare all the metaphors in that kind of sense. And colonizing loudspeaker is actually one that we made up. It's not one that we heard from others, but we've learned a lot from other people's metaphors as well. Michael's saying handed the keys to a fast car without being taught to drive. Oh yeah, I like that one a lot. Okay. So tell me about a way that generative AI has worked well for you recently while using it in processes or products that are open. So some of you have talked about using it for certain things. All right. Does anyone want to share more about this? Ways they've used AI that worked well recently? Revising rubrics. Yeah, I use it to create rubrics in the first place because I don't like rubrics. But then the rubrics are actually based on things that students have said, and they don't know how to do rubrics, so we just take what they've said, make a rubric out of it, and then we revise it. Polishing things, yeah. A lot of my students say they use it for polishing things. To correct YouTube video captions. Ah, that's interesting. I mean, the video captions are AI already, a lot of the times. So to correct them, that's interesting. I never thought of doing it that way. All right, let me open this bigger. Was creating a new class. Develop a starting framework for math project. Okay. Creating a new class used to help with lesson plans and worksheets. Some things were good, some things were not. Yeah. I'm using it to help design alternate energy windmills. Okay. To actually design the alternate energy? That's so interesting. To help develop a UDL course. Yeah. Helping me identify themes in my ideas, brain dump and see what it notices. And then tossing not too good sometimes. Yeah, it hasn't worked well for me other than editing. Part of the many things people recommend it for, I've already optimized already. Yeah, I know what you mean. Turning my notes from a meeting to an organized report. Yeah, I've used it for that before. Sometimes misses details, but it can work sometimes. Helping students feel comfortable with interviews. Yeah, so it's a place to practice and try out this kind of thing. Aligning outcomes with assignment deliverables in multiple ways. It's a good idea. Creating an in-class activity. Had a topic in computer science and asked AI to create a project involving Pokemon. Yeah, that's always interesting. And it was for a student who's interested in that in class. It's always interesting when you ask it to do very creative things that probably no one's ever written about and see what it does. Usually if it's something someone's written about, you could just read what they wrote, without asking AI specifically. Had students explore AI tools and create a resource for others. Only use it to see what it does with my guidelines so I can recognize AI when students submit it. Oh, that's interesting. Yes, that's an important one. We actually advise everybody to give their assignment to AI and see what it does so that they can imagine what students would be able to do. At the very least, you need to know what your students are able to do, right? Taking a previous assignment and using it to convert it to the tilt format. That's cool. I recently heard about tilt. You can put a link about that, Kristen, if you want it. And as I was saying, creating course materials, creating rubric, communicate with students 24/7, getting feedback. So using like a tutor to communicate with students. Creating images and level materials based on students I have. I spend so much time trying to get AI images not to appear like they're generated by AI because I get upset when I see too many AI generated images. I sort of figured out how to do it sometimes. Doesn't always work. As for examples of mathematics topic involving various career paths. Oh, that's interesting. Lots of hallucinations in designs. Yes, I see a lot of hallucinations. And when there are a few hallucinations, it's even more worrying because then you can let down your guard and you won't notice them. Asking it to do what I seek to do so that I can do something really different. I love that. Nice one, Barbara. And help me put together a PowerPoint on quality research. Yeah, my husband was asked to do like a presentation with very little time to prepare, and it created a PowerPoint for him to get started, and then he filled in the details, but it had a lot of good starting points, he says. So if we're going to squeeze people for time, they're going to use AI for things like that. Oh, with hundreds of sticky notes, right? So they can read the sticky notes, I'm guessing, right? I've seen that done before. Interview questions based on specific topics. Yeah. They're probably not going to be very creative interview questions, but most people's questions aren't that creative, right? All right. What about this one? What are some aspects of AI that you feel may contradict the most important values in open education? And I know there's at least one person who felt that it completely contradicts. Attribution, yes, because AI by default doesn't attribute, not all AI tools are the same, and we're only talking about generative AI here, but the default for ChatGPT is not to attribute, but it's starting to attribute. And tools like Perplexity attribute, but they don't attribute properly. They put the attribution, and then you go to the link, and it doesn't necessarily say what it says it says. So I'm very concerned about a lot of things that come out of AI, and we have no idea where it's coming from and who said it. Like if you use it to create a lesson plan, is this a lesson plan of someone else in the US? Is it a lesson plan from someone in South Africa? Like, where's it getting these ideas from? You have no idea. You can't trace it back, and you're not really giving credit to where it's due and things like that. Leanne's saying she likes to regularly ask LMs to summarize research articles she's read, yeah, and evaluate whether they provide correct summaries. Yeah. Okay, and only once has an LM drawn a conclusion that was inaccurate. Oh, that's interesting. But I actually I see that it misses a lot of details, and especially social justice nuance. And Daniel's talking about, yeah, use it for time constraints, exactly. Daniel's talking about cognitive offloading. And Jeff not respecting copyright, of course, especially we know the image generation AI. A lot of artists are very upset about that aspect. Greg, probably the education part. Yeah, exactly. Taking materials from the commons and putting it behind a paywall. That is interesting. Yeah. Right, because not everything that AI does is free, right? A dilution of culture, nuance, and artistry. Yes, Leanne, I agree. Copilot doesn't always give me the link even when asked for it, which is funny because it cited a website correctly and you can verify it. Yeah, exactly. You can verify and sometimes it won't. Image generation based on ideas rather than authentic application practice skills. Yeah. Oh, Leanne is saying the LLM only once drew a correct conclusion that she had missed. More frequently, LLM summaries of research are incorrect. That makes more sense to me. Yeah, that makes more sense to me, but I thought maybe you just had a really good experience, which could happen sometimes. Um, yeah, something gets lost when we use it. All right. Thank you all for that. I promise I'm going to start talking about other things. Kiyomi is talking about stealing from artists and authors as the biggest issue with AI, other than the cognitive decline and wasting energy for things you can optimize in other ways. I agree. I'll talk about that part too. All right. Tell me a quick thing. Key takeaways from yesterday. I wasn't able to attend yesterday and I wanted to. Oh, theft of First Nations knowledge. I don't know if they have access to First Nations knowledge. I'll talk about this also later. And I think First Nations here, you mean a particular group of Indigenous folks in Canada? I'm not sure. But I know that there's literature on Indigenous, sacred Indigenous knowledge and AI, which I'll talk about soon. Jody's talking about students' critical thinking elements are lost unless you direct specific research to support the prompts. Yes. So tell me something that was a key takeaway for you from yesterday. I don't know if you all attended yesterday's event, but I'm curious. AI in support of producing OER. Yeah, okay. I'm curious about how it was particularly used in that. Still have a lot to learn about AI. I think every day, all of us, really, even those of us who work with it on a regular basis. Co-creation and the website Cogniti. I do not know that website. Using Bloom's taxonomy to teach AI literacy. Okay. Having students ask AI to create personas and address a problem from different specific points of view. Because of work, I was only able to attend the keynote, and I continue to love Canadian thought leadership and how much clarity and nuance they bring to the topic of AI, OER, and HE. How AI can support remixing for accessibility. Critical thinking worries come up a lot. A great example of small ways AI can help get something done. And text to dialogue. What if educators didn't write textbooks in future, only wrote structured prompts or chatbots? All right, thank you all for sharing that. All right, I am gonna tell you the thing. I'm gonna start with this and end with it also. which I think is a good way for us to decide for ourselves. It depends on your context, right? But I'm hoping that we can make decisions about when to use AI by looking at learning and equity. So does this use of AI support learning, or in the case of OER, openness? But then we need to ask, does it disadvantage some audiences? Does it help teachers or learners do something valuable or that would have been difficult or unimaginable without it? This relates to a point some of you were saying in the chat earlier about, can you optimize it some other way? If you can optimize it some other way, then do we really need to use AI for this given the carbon footprint, right? So sometimes you think that you're going to use AI for something that's going to save you time, but is it really? And is it something you really can't do without it? And then how does it affect trust and community in the classroom in the end when you're using AI this way or when you're making a decision about AI, right? So it would look like this. It would be like two axes. Does it improve or not improve learning? Is it equitable or inequitable? And think about all the things you're considering doing and put it in the quadrants. And unless it improves learning and is equitable, I wouldn't advise going ahead with it that way. I'd think about it differently. We'll come back to this later because I want to look at several frameworks related to social justice first. So my critical AI literacy model, for me, I say critical, I don't mean just critical thinking in Bloom's taxonomy and that kind of thing and skepticism. I actually mean also critical theory and critical pedagogy and sort of being aware of social justice issues and cultivating learners a disposition to redress these, right? And as Ben Williamson says, we shouldn't consider AI inevitable, beneficial, or transformative in a straightforward way. We need to keep thinking of it as contested and controversial. And we need to always continue to have this public deliberation and ongoing oversight if any of the possible benefits are to be realized and if we're going to address the potential risks. So I think we should always have that in mind. And these things change over time. It depends on your context, depends on what you're trying to do with it, and depends on what's happening in the world too, right? And so in my critical AI literacy model, I usually start with making sure that students understand how AI works. But then before they start using it, I mean, they're already using it. It's not that they're not going to use it. They already have been using it. But I mean, before I give them the freedom to use it, we start with recognizing the inequalities and biases. And I spend so much time in my class making sure they build an awareness of what bias means and what inequity means and how they experience it on a daily basis in their own lives and what is implicit bias, what is unconscious bias, right? And we examine the ethical issues with AI. And then we talk about crafting effective prompts. And I don't like the term prompt engineering because engineering is relatively precise and prompting is not precise at all. And it doesn't guarantee you an outcome. It's not like a calculator. You don't know what's going to come out. But just experimenting really with trying different ways of prompting to getting what you want. And the thing is that I want them in the end to be able to assess when it's appropriate to use AI or not in their own field, in their own world. It's not, I don't want to tell them how to do it. I want them to develop that wisdom and judgment and criticality to decide when to use and to choose not to use it sometimes, right? So on the recognizing inequalities and biases element, I'm going to skip this video, but it's a really cool video using Legos to explain oppression on different levels. And I'm just going to show you how I think AI reproduces oppression. So ideological oppression, for me, is the whole implicit bias in AI outputs and the epistemic injustice and the fact that most AI tools are trained on mainly Western knowledge. Although there are AIs created in different parts of the world, they're trained on different data, of course. But it's still going to exhibit some kind of bias or another, right? And then internalized oppression is when the people who are oppressed believe in their own oppression even more. So someone was talking about people whose writing is not so good. When you think about non-native speakers, and I work here in Egypt and an American university, almost everyone's a non-native speaker in my class. And they think AI writes better than they do. And so they use AI so much more. And then they lose their own writing voice that can be unique and special and still not completely incorrect grammar-wise. But it doesn't sound as impressive. So it goes back to this fake impressive type of thing. So that's kind of problematic. And I know we have a professor who's Greek who has a little bit of an accent when speaking English, and he wants us to create a deep fake of his voice so that we can make his voice sound like it's a native speaker. And I think these things are not good to make people. I know in real life there is native speakerism, but I don't think it's good to use AI to make it worse and exacerbate it. Interpersonal on the, when we use things like AI detectors and the kind of conversations we have, or the ways AI sometimes is a censor, it kind of reproduces some kind of interpersonal oppression. Like here, the AI itself is like in a conversation with you that's making you feel bad. And then institutionalized oppression, I think when we use AI for things like rating or learning analytics based on norms, then it reproduces oppression in that way because it's normalizing what's possible, and then everybody who's outside the norm is labeled as something different. We know that historically, AI in admission and recruitment and so on reproduces bias, of course, in criminal justice system, in facial recognition. So there's all that. And there's also like who has access to which tools and with which language, right? Someone saying spell check tool ruin their spelling. Yeah. And then Nancy Fraser is someone whose work I really respect on the topic of social justice, and her framework reminds us that injustice is not only economic, but can also be cultural or political. In OER conversations, a lot of people tend to focus on the economic aspect of open being free, but not necessarily wondering, is there cultural appropriation here? Are some cultures not even represented in the OERs that we do? So can you create OERs that just reproduce hegemonic knowledge? Like, for example, Wikipedia has so much more content on male figures than female figures, so much more content on Western scientists and notable figures than non-Western ones, for example. And then the third aspect is political. It's like who has control. So even if you are someone based in the US who is white and you're creating an OER and you make sure that you represent a lot of cultures, but does your team represent diversity? And especially now in the US where you're not allowed to even say those words anymore, this is so much harder to do. So it's important to think about AI and where these things fall in the conversation, right? Nancy Fraser also talks about how redressing injustice can be ameliorative, kind of like a band-aid, or is it transformative? Is it fixing the root of the problem? And her end goal would be parity of participation, that everybody participates and everybody participates on an equal footing. It's not that the powerful create a space and then invite others to give feedback on it. No, it's about everybody having equal vote on the table, right? So on the economic side, whenever we're talking about using AI for anything, who has access to paid platforms, who has access to better connectivity and electricity? I was at this AI for Good conference and people talking about all kinds of ways of using AI for people in remote areas who don't have access to healthcare. And I'm thinking, remote areas, they may not even have good access to electricity to even charge their devices, to even connect to the internet, you know? And they don't think about those things. And then also like once you have access to this remote kind of healthcare, you still need a doctor sometimes to do things with you, right? So it doesn't connect very well. Who has access to human support beyond? And I think that's another important thing. A lot of times students will resort to AI because they don't have like a teaching assistant or they don't have a person at home to support them. Like if we're not giving students the support systems they need and they feel like they need help, they may resort to AI, not because AI is better, but because they have no other option or we haven't given them another option or they're not aware of their other options. Like students who have trouble writing, we have a writing center. Why don't they go to the writing center? Are there not enough people in the writing center? If we need more people in the writing center, why aren't we paying people to support people with their writing and instead encouraging people to use AI? You need to think about these things. Because AI will fix their writing, but it's not going to teach them how to write better for the most part. It could sometimes, depends on how you prompt it, of course. In terms of culture, like we talked about, like whose cultures are represented in AI models, whose cultures experience AI biases. My culture experiences AI biases all the time. So like 50% of the time I'm seeing AI bias, whereas a lot of people I talk to who are white male Western don't tend to experience as much bias as I do, or they don't prompt it to find the biases. So they feel like, oh yeah, it's biased a little bit. But I'm like, no, 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 it's biased a lot, you know? And on the political level, who creates and trains AI? Also, who has the processors and who has the hardware, which is very important here as well. Who profits from AI? And a lot of times they're not people who care about education. And what hidden curriculum does AI perpetuate? What are some things that are going to happen even when we don't intend them to happen? When we're using AI or when AI is just part of the process? So people have talked about disability and using AI for accessibility. Yes, gender bias, big time. Also, all right. So when we're talking about AI to better support people with disabilities, can we do that without reproducing normativity and ableism? So people who are visually impaired benefit a lot from screen readers, and screen readers will read out for you what's written, and it will take your voice and write it out for you. We all have access to some of that technology anyway, but people with a visual impairment may have more advanced tools. They also have tools like Be My AI that will look at a picture and tell you what's in it if people haven't made the effort. So this is all useful. It doesn't really solve the entire problem. It's useful. But I've heard people say like, oh, we'll use AI so that someone with autism can make their writing sound more normal. And I think this is problematic because we're treating what they come up with as something that we don't all need to adapt to and asking them to adapt to us. Whereas we should all learn to accept neurodivergent, you know, and not expect everyone to behave the same. So I read this article recently that I found really useful. It's called Avoiding the Disability Dongle. And a disability dongle is a well-intended, elegant, yet useless solution to a problem that disabled people never knew they had. And when we're using something, including AI tools, what is the problem the technology is trying to solve? Is that a problem disabled people actually have? Sometimes it is, sometimes it doesn't. And the important question is the technology attempting to circumvent a symptom of inaccessibility, or is it addressing inaccessibility directly? And this is speaking to whether you're solving a systemic problem or you're solving the wrong problem and doing a band-aid. And also, how, if at all, were disabled people involved in the development of the technology? Did they serve in a leadership role? Were the disabled people compensated? And this speaks to parity of participation, right? And I'm talking about disability here, but I want you to think through every minority group. Yes, exactly. Being disabled or neurodiverse is not a problem. There are problems that people face because the world and that we have designed is not accessible. But this is a social problem. It's not a problem with them. It's a problem with the way we have designed the world to make it not accessible to them. And so we need to fix the roots of this. Yes, I agree, Jonathan. Yeah, if there's not enough human support for things, it's a systemic problem that AI is actually a terrible solution for. It's a social problem, and AI is not a good. One of the things that drove me crazy in the AI for Good Summit is using robots to be companions for elderly people. And I think no, the problem is why can't we create better hospice and palliative care and support their families economically so that they can be with them and pay humans to be caregivers in ways that don't burn them out and compensate them so that this can work out. And to use AI instead is just such a weird, for me, solution to that. And then another question they're asking in that article is who's cast as the hero of promotional materials of AI for accessibility? And do the promotional materials perpetuate misinformation about disabled people? Because a lot of times there's cultural misappropriation here. Kiyomi's talking about how screen readers' interpretation of accessible content is over the place. They're better than nothing, of course, yes. But technology overall seems pretty terrible for me. Yeah. Also, the Copilot content app is not very accessible for people who are blind. Yes. Tech is dead set on separating us, Daniel. Yeah, exactly. Like when we all support each other, there's relationships to be built here. It's not a transaction, right? It's more than transactions. And Barbara's saying it also echoes something she read, do not remember who and where, sorry, but take the liberty to rephrase the problem when you feel it is not stated in the right terms. Yeah, I agree. And the last one, which is very important, and students in my institution who have disabilities tell me this is a huge issue, which is the technology affordable, particularly to disabled people on fixed incomes? And for them, it's the 10th question. I skipped some of their questions, by the way, but this speaks to economic injustice. So a lot of times they'll create a solution, and maybe it checks a lot of the boxes that we've just asked before, but it's not affordable. But just replace this with any minority group and ask these questions again. And you'll find, I know of a tool that someone's developing and they show you pictures of indigenous people and how they're going to use their AI tools. And the people who developed it are all white men. So who says that these white men are going to solve the problems of indigenous groups? You don't know what the problems of indigenous groups are, and you don't know that they want you to solve their problems for them. Thank you for those who are posting things in the chat, like links, I mean. And getting accommodation is not always affordable either, yeah. And sometimes, okay, they get the accommodation when they're in college and they have access to a tool, and then they graduate and they don't have that tooling. And about these bias things, it's just that what I've noticed in these conversations is we know everyone has biases and especially unconscious bias, but not everyone's aware of their unconscious biases. And the bias in AI has caused harm in the past: recruitment, criminal justice, facial recognition. I think people who are very optimistic about AI not being like this anymore don't understand how AI works, don't understand that historically these things have existed. They can be improved, but they can never be 100% better because you can't control what the AI is going to give you each time. Like the way machine learning type AI works is that you're never sure exactly what it's going to give you for the most part. Because the programmer, I used to be one of them, you have no idea how AI is coming up with these answers exactly. You know what you gave it, but you have no idea exactly how it's coming up with the answers. And I'm going to skip over some of this, but back to the issue of indigenous knowledge. And one of the paradoxes I think about this, which is very important, is if people who have sacred knowledge, who are indigenous, give their data to AI companies, then they lose agency. They lose rhetorical, technological, and data sovereignty over their work. And we need to that it's better for them not to give it because they have no idea what's going to happen with this. But then when they don't give their data, then what ends up happening is then they're allowing perpetuation of Western-centric biases and systemic racism into these algorithms. Tula, your hand is up, but I'm not really sure what's going on. Did you want to say something? Anyway, I am going to say, and I think a lot of you will have noticed that AI tools often refuse to exhibit explicit bias, but there's a lot of implicit biases. And these are all papers that say that. And they've done these experiments with different things, like it recognizes dialects and it does discriminate based on that. It'll discriminate based on people from lower socioeconomic regions and things like that. The experiment that I've done myself was trying to ask AI, is a person from this country or that country more likely to be a terrorist? And it will say, no, 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 we can't stereotype based on things like that. But then if you ask indirectly, define terrorism and give me 5 examples of terrorism, it will almost always, and I've tried like 5 different AI tools, 3 or 4 of these examples are going to be Islamic terrorism. And so there's obviously a bias against Islamic terrorism in the word terrorism in the data that AI has been trained on. And it won't tell you directly, but indirectly that's what it's doing. And if we keep using AI for educational materials or OERs, this will keep happening. And if you're not someone who's already very aware of these particular implicit biases, I'm not aware of every implicit bias I have, or implicit biases that others may have. This will keep happening. We'll keep perpetuating this. Given the racist way media reports on terrorists, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, exactly. Because if it's using internet, that's what's on the internet, right? This is a research paper called Which Humans, which I love. And I think it's now been published, but this is the preprint version that I'm linking to, but it's been published now. And it's showing you how the closer your culture is to US culture, the more likely AI tools, like especially ChatGPT, will respond like you. Of course, US culture is not monolithic, so this is problematic too, but on average, people from the US, Canada, Australia, Singapore have a culture closer to the US, so ChatGPT will respond quite similarly to what you would say. But if you're from somewhere like Egypt, like I am, or Pakistan or Jordan or Nigeria, you're culturally quite different from the US, and the correlation between what you would say and GPT would say is quite far. And this would explain why I come across AI bias a lot more than a lot of my white colleagues. I'm going to skip the part about accountability versus automation, but my point here is it's not about how good the AI is at certain things. It's about the importance of accountability and being able to justify why we're doing things certain ways and justify our decisions. And there are certain things where it's not okay. You need to still be accountable for what you do, even if you're using AI. I'm about to run out of time. So I'm going to recommend strongly eCampus Ontario's Harm Considerations of LLMs resource. And I use this with my students and that's an OER. And you click on any of these and find out more about the harm to the environment or the harm to the economy and things like that. And then I let the students figure out for themselves what matters to them. And I want to say it's important to think about when we're using AI tools that have been deployed for harm, for things like genocide and targeted depopulation, eugenics, genetic selection, autonomous warfare, civilian termination, all of these things, these are tools. Is it okay to use tools? Any evil person will use any tool in evil ways. But if it's the same companies that we're using AI for, and they support global dictatorships and all of these things, even being used for distribution of aid, can you just give me a second? I just need to change the room I'm in. Sorry, my husband just got a phone call and didn't leave the room. So, all right, I'm almost out of time, and thank you for posting the link. Ooh, cognitive bias codex. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to look at this later. This assessing appropriate use, I think, is the important thing that we all need to be working on, right? I'm not dictating to others how they should. So if there's a way that generative AI has not worked well for you recently, can you tell me in the chat? And I know some people have already shared some. The things that I've found, like this paper by Selwyn and others, it's talking about when the prompting isn't helpful. Like it ends up taking more time. Basically, you know, we need to challenge the efficiency narrative because sometimes there's so much hidden labor in the process of illusion of automation. Like you're working with AI and then you're spending so much time fixing what it's done that it's not really saving you time. And you're doing work that's not as much fun as if you did it yourself. I was recently, my boss and I were creating multiple choice questions. So we'd give one of the AI tools like Google Notebook LM or something, or Perplexity, the materials, and we'd say create multiple choice questions, and then the questions wouldn't be good, and they'd say, can you make them plausible? Can you make the distractors plausible? Can you make them the same length? And honestly, I don't like multiple choice questions in the first place as an assessment, but it was a self-paced course, so what are we gonna do? But then we'd spend so much time revising. So I was revising my own and revising hers, and it just took me so much time, whereas I just could have created better multiple choice questions, even if I don't like doing multiple choice questions. And in the end, a lot of times I ended up doing that. 50 M dashes. Developing a longer course runs out of steam and becomes really repetitive and dull. Ooh, of course, yes, of course. That I hear that all the time. When the Google Deep Research and the Deep Research Perplexity and so on would create 10,000 word papers, I mean, really, they don't have a lot to say. So, what are they going to do with these 10,000 words? And you have to revise all that. I'm going to skip the cake analogy because I don't have time. I do want to refer to Helen Beetham's work on fake research, right? And fake citations and fake peer reviews and whole fake research topics. And there's papers on this. We all know this, but it's just like a lot now. And if you're going to use it for OER and you're not necessarily sure what's in the papers it's citing and whether these papers exist, you have to check all that. And then you're passing this on as knowledge to others, and we got to be really careful with this. There's much less of this happening when you feed it particular things to work on, but it's still not bulletproof. It's not proof. Like it just still makes problems. So tell me, what do you think AI should not be used for in your field even if it becomes good at it? And there should be things that we believe that about. Yeah. So Eleanor is saying whenever she asks ChatGPT to write a paragraph on something, she ends up correcting it a lot. The information is not correct or generic or it's uninteresting. Sometimes it sounds like marketing hype. Yeah, Leanne, summarizing content. Is that something you do with it or you don't do with it? Because I remember you were saying earlier it gets wrong conclusions, right? Doing math problems for students, not a good thing. As one psychotherapist, I find it so shocking that people are considering AI for therapy. Guess things wrong. Yeah, all the time. And students doing it for themselves wouldn't know. In science, you need to learn the basics to recognize bias AI. Exactly. You need to know the basics so that you can use it. Like even with a calculator, which will always give you the right answer if you give it the right input, you need to know how to do math before you can use a calculator. But it's kind of like, if I already know this stuff, why do I need to use the AI in the first place? It's kind of a cycle. Yeah, the confidentiality issue for therapy is huge, but also just like, really? That's the thing we're gonna use AI for? Creative writing. Yeah, it's very boring on the creative side. It can do some creative things if you're not a creative person, but then you need to hone your creativity muscles. Most of us are so much more creative than that. Building community in a course is very important. Yeah, I wouldn't use AI bots for that, of course. Yeah, again, back to this transactionality, right? Replacing students' problem-solving skills. Yeah. Don't see enough people talking about students are not immune from being swayed, even when they know intellectually, yes, because the AI sounds so confident, right? Just about anything that's creative, it does do well. Yeah, I agree. I'm so happy to see all you guys. You all seem to have a very informed and critical perspective of AI. So I'm not sure if I told you anything you didn't know before already, but I learned a lot listening to you and reading from you. So back to this learning equity matrix, create your own. For me, the multiple choice questions, is this really a good form of assessment in the first place? But now we're learning to do it quicker with AI, and the effort you put into making the AI give good MCQs and the time to revise and correct, is that a good use of our time? I'm thinking now. I've done it and I can tell you it's not a very good use of my time. Um, Forming historical perspective. All right. And in introducing cultural diversity. people tell me, oh, we'll use AI to create personas or whatever. Well, these personas are not real people. Are you going to replace working with actually diverse groups of people to create OERs by letting AI pretend to be? And we know that AI is worse at pretending to be non-white people for the most part. And can this risk more biasing and stereotyping and cultural appropriation? And for translation, I use AI for translation, but I only translate English to Arabic or Arabic to English, the two languages that I'm very fluent in, so that I can check for accuracy. And it's getting better, and this is very useful. It saves time, but you still need to revise it because it can mess up, and messing up with translation is, I mean, translation is already kind of a violent act, and it can make it so much worse. All right, so I'm going to skip over my learning equity matrix, but I think take your time to do one on your own or use it to help other people. I've got some resources. MyFest is online learning we do throughout June, July, and August. It's about to end, but we're still there. So myfest.equityunbound.org, you're welcome to join us, and you can pay along a scale. These are more resources. Sorry that the slides aren't showing them very well, but if you download the slides, you can, or if you open the link to the slides, you can get there. I am going to stop here and ask you what's a key takeaway for you. And then if anybody wants to ask questions, I think I have like 4 minutes. Yeah, human interaction is already hard for people, and social media has made it harder for people to interact. I'm seeing this with people my daughter's age in their early teens, and so we really don't want them to be talking to AI. And I was reading recently, I think it was a Common Sense Media report about how a lot of young people are using, I don't know what they're called. I think they're called AI companions, and they talk with them instead of talking to their friends. And when I was at this AI for Good Global Summit, they were creating teddy bears that talk to your children to keep them company. And I'm thinking, can't they just talk to their siblings or their neighbors or their friends or their parents? Like, you're giving an AI tool over to your child, and you have no idea what the AI tool is going to say back to them. And thinking about the ones that chatbots that led people to suicide and led people to crimes, and like, what about the child's confidentiality? Or like, what is this? What are we doing? What are we doing by replacing human relations with AI tools of any kind? Yeah, Umida's saying having to be mindful when using AI. Laverta, a lot to learn. Data sources need to be more diverse. Yeah. Many takeaways. Most immediately, ways I unintentionally engage in AI shaming, either to those who are reluctant or those who are enthusiastic. It's interesting that you feel that way about both. I'm sure I do it too, by the way. I just try not to. You gave so much info to consider. Teach stats and the DSJ. Okay. Teaching with books cannot be replaced. Reading scores prove it. Oh, I didn't know that. I read on Kindle, but my daughter likes hard copy books. Students turn to AI because they do not know any other way to help them assist with. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Talking to. Go ahead.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, this time is drawing to an end. We need to give some time for people to get to their next
Yeah.
session. Um, I want to thank you so much for coming to our institute. And we really appreciate the time and the work that you've put into this presentation, and helping us to provide a more balanced view in the middle of this swirl of edtech hype we seem to be in the middle of. So it's going to be interesting to see how all of this sorts out, and your voice and contributions to the scholarship are really appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jeff. Thank you all for staying till the end. And I'm going to stop sharing the screen, but feel free to get in touch any other time. Thank you. Let me
Okay,
send you
thank you.
guys some hearts. Bye.